Hello! Before we start this episode, we have a quick content warning. This manga has certain themes and imagery that some people will find upsetting. If you're worried about these, please find the names of these themes in the description. Thank you and enjoy the episode. Welcome!
Don't mind me.
Welcome everyone to OCHATO, the fortnightly podcast where we drink tea and review manga. I am Jade.
Hi, I'm Oliver. Too late!
What?
I did last week. I am second. Has it gone so wrong so quickly?
Take too long of a pause.
Take two.
Welcome everyone to OCHATO, the fortnightly podcast where we drink tea and review manga. I am Jade.
Hi, I'm Oliver.
And I'm Suellen.
Every 2 weeks, we pick a manga that one of us has recommended and we read up to a certain chapter and discuss the manga with loads of spoilers. This week, we are reading Oyasumi Punpun by Inio Asano up to chapter 34, and this was recommended by me. But before diving in, we must know the answer to the most important question. What is everyone drinking in their mug?
Oh my god.
Drinking too much, apparently.
I thought that was a gag.
It was going to be, but I ended up inhaling my tea instead.
Oh no.
So today it's lovely, lovely English breakfast.
Ooh.
Decaf as usual.
Yep, you know me.
Nice. And I'm drinking Free Mints by Puka. It's great. I love mint, guys. Would recommend.
So good.
I am also drinking puka, but this is peppermint and licorice.
Ooh, licorice.
Yeah, I wouldn't expect it to be nice, but it's quite sweet and you don't really think that it's licorice at all. If you do taste the licorice, it's very, 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 very mild.
Ooh.
It's really nice.
Must check it out.
Yeah, it's really good.
Mm.
Okie dokie. We are reading Oyasumi Punpun. It was first published in 2007, and the official description on the Viz website is, meet Punpun Punyama. He is an average kid in an average town. He wants to win a Nobel Prize and save the world. He wants the girl he has a crush on to like him back. He wants to find some porn. That's what he gets, but what does he get? And what does he get? I leave that up to you. First impressions of Oyasumi Punpun.
So when I went into this, I expected it to be dark because it's quite a well-known manga at this point, and everyone who recommends it is like, oh, please read this. It's like so dark. So I guess I expected it, but I guess it still managed to sort of shock me because like everything is so bizarre. The way people are drawn is realistic, but it's really scary. I got really creeped out. So I guess my first impression would be creeped out. So creeped out.
Yeah, I've heard that's quite a common one. It's kind of similar on my end where I had heard a lot about Oyasumi Punpun. No actual like spoilers, but I'd heard that it was like super depressing. People were crying. They were doing like basically what I did when I played Life is Strange episode 4. So just like, it ruins your life for a week. So I actually did a little bit of research beforehand, much like I did with Berserk, just to kind of understand where the mangaka is coming from. So what kind of story are they trying to tell? And then I can appreciate it for that rather than being shocked that it's really dark or something. So yeah, it was pretty weird. But since I kind of knew it was going to be dark, it wasn't like, oh my God, what am I reading?
What did you learn for your research then?
So I had basically heard that overwhelmingly that it was pretty depressing and that it's really about this boy who essentially is just kind of apathetic on everything and lets all the opportunities that come to him kind of slip through his fingers and then gets kind of frustrated about that. And that's pretty much what I came in expecting, was somebody that has all these opportunities and some good stuff too, but basically messes it up pretty consistently. So yeah, came in a bit prepared, but not really with any spoilers. Jade, was this your first time reading this, or had you read it before?
This is probably my second or third time reading it. I think I first read it when I was around 15 years old.
Whoa.
Damn, that would have been heavy at 14.
Yeah, it was pretty heavy. And I think it's just one of those kind of things that stick with you. And when you read it back as you get older, the meaning kind of changes a bit and you start to see things in a different light. And obviously in 34 chapters, not that much has happened, but still a substantial amount has happened to Punpun as he navigates his childhood. And Suellen, I really agree with you when you said you found it a bit creepy, because I did as well. And I suppose I want to ask, what did you guys think of the artwork of this manga?
I, again, quite liked it. It was, as you said earlier, weird, especially going from the kind of, you get the really low quality picture of Punpun, right? He's drawn in maybe one line. And then you get the like photorealistic, I think he's called the Afro God or just God. And then you have other characters that are drawn, you know, anywhere from the kind of level that Punpun is, like his parents, to those really quite, I would say, pretty drawings of people in various circumstances. So I thought it did quite well to convey the message it was getting across. And I actually quite liked Punpun being, what is he, a bird?
Yeah,
He's a bird.
Yeah, so like with other characters, you can pretty clearly see what they're feeling, right? Because there's so much kind of detail there, and the art allows them to be so expressive that it's easy to tell what they're saying. But for the main character, while we have this inner monologue, most of the reactions we get are very simplified. And I thought that worked quite well. It makes it a bit easier to imagine how he's feeling as opposed to seeing how he's feeling. So I thought it worked really well. It was clearly a bit experimental.
I would agree, because in a way, like, we could all kind of relate to Punpun. So like this feeling of like, oh, bad things is happening sort of around you and you sort of just want to like escape. And I guess the way he's drawn this way is got to easier. He doesn't need to be like seen as like has a proper face and has like proper features to express his emotions. You can kind of like, as readers, I feel like most of us can just feel it through the narration and through, even if it's just like a still frame of him or him panicking, or like you can feel it regardless. Like that's like the beauty of art. It's like up for interpretation, and if you do it well, it's like even with a few strokes you can get what the mangaka or the artist is trying to say. Yeah, with the art, I think, hands down, the mangaka is really skilled with background, with character and everything. Like even if like the characters walk past the street and there's like this old man or an old woman or just random pedestrians that are like there, like they manage to make them realistic and distinctive and creepy. Like what's with that? I keep expecting like every time I see like a character, like especially like the head teachers or like the teachers, I'm just like expecting them to do some creepy stuff, like weird stuff. I trusted no one with this manga. Everyone's gonna do something weird or like be a weirdo.
You know who I thought was the creepiest? For me, it was actually the god, partly because he's got a slightly different art style. He's photorealistic as opposed to just really well drawn. But he's always just got that smile. And he's saying some pretty dark stuff at points. Like,
every time he like shows up, it's like, oh, go away. Like, why are you here?
Yeah. Did you notice the art style when you first read this at 14, Jade? Or was it more kind of a thing that you had to be conscious of?
I definitely didn't notice it at 14. I think at 14 I just took in the story more than the art. But now that I'm a bit older, I definitely can enjoy the art a lot more for how it's done. I really, really like the use of the shading he used to create really intense scenes. I actually really like the mix of photographs and drawings, and that's really refreshing to see. And I read on Wikipedia the mangaka took photos and converted them to black and white, and then his assistants could draw the outlines and objects on them. So I thought it was a really interesting, because I've never seen that in a manga before, and seeing it in Punpun was really, really great.
Must have taken a lot of effort. Like you have to like angle it, like the perspective, I don't know, exactly right.
Yeah, but it slots so well into the manga somehow.
Oh yeah.
I think a lot of it is the mangaka's use of blacks. Even just flicking through it now, there's quite a few pages that are just like a black background and text, or generally really dark. And I think that works really nicely with those kind of photorealistic images they've put into.
Definitely. What did you guys think of the characters?
Yeah, like I said, I trusted no one, because all the like non-Burr like people and people who are not like Punpun's friends, they all seem so manic. Although I do admit, like I let my guard down with Aiko, but then I was like, oh, you know, she seemed cute. She was just, you know, being nice, you know. And then she said some stuff being like, real like yandere stuff, like be with me forever or I'll kill you. I'm like, never mind. Trust no one.
Yeah, she seemed very childlike, and making somebody at that age, at like, what are they, like 11, I think, promise you something forever is clearly, like, at 11 not the kind of promise you're actually making. But the fact that she was so caught up on it worries me somewhat. I could see being like, I promise to love you forever and ever kind of thing at 11. Like, we all did that. But to be so insistent does worry me somewhat.
She literally says, I'll kill you.
Yeah, that was a little weird, but I wouldn't put it past an 11-year-old. It's a bit weird, but
interesting.
Well, it's the kind of thing where you don't necessarily have that understanding of the consequences of what you're saying, right? And so the same kind of dedication that loving forever takes might, in theory, also be the thing that you have for killing, if that made sense. They're both pretty serious promises to make, and I don't think that at 11 you'd really understand the consequences behind that. But who knows? I guess we'll find out as we progress further in. What did you think of Punpun?
Like I said at the beginning, that I found him, I guess, quite relatable in the sense he's sort of freaking thought that his brain was melting. And it's like, I think a good coming of age sort of story. Everyone like could find some bits of him, like to be like, when I was a kid, I was like that. And I feel sorry for him. There's just so much, like, every time there's something's happen, I'm like, here we go again. There's like, here's this, and now there's a tape. Like, of course they're going to find a tape with like a serial murderer's confession on it. And of course they're going to go and look for it. Of course they're going to see a ghost. It's like every turn there's something like bleak and sad happening.
I think the fact that I'm looking at the characters just on one of the wikis, and like nobody is smiling except of course God, says quite a lot. Like they all look quite sad, to be honest with you, or at least annoyed. What about the parents, right? Because the family is clearly pretty dysfunctional, and I think that coming in as 23, we can kind of read behind the lines a bit with some of the stuff they're saying.
I feel like Oyasumi Punpun really shows you how kind of fucked up people can be sometimes. And I felt really sad for Punpun at times. For example, when his mum said that she shouldn't have had a baby in an argument with his dad, and she doesn't really want to acknowledge Punpun that much. And I felt sad for Punpun also because I felt like he just tried to go with the flow a lot of the times. He is a kid and, he hangs around with other kids, and these kids are exposed to some really dark stuff. For example, when they were trying to watch porn, and then the serial murderer's tape comes up, I feel like they're all really young and trying to do anything in life, and that made me feel really sad.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. It's kind of hard to say because the dysfunctional family obviously really doesn't help. And there's a scene, I'm not quite sure if it's in the 34 chapters, but it doesn't really spoil much, where basically his mum just yells at him, and then a scene later or something, she's like, I'm sorry I did that, kind of thing. It's like, well, you shouldn't really have been yelling in public or at your son at all. That's not fine. You can clearly see like every kind of member of the family has their own problems. So like Yuichi, clearly there's something wrong. Yuichi being the uncle. The dad and the mum clearly don't get along. So, unhappy parents make for an unhappy child. It was kind of like watching a train wreck in slow motion for the start, because you could see Punpun forming his own ideas on things, and when he just wants to kind of get away, be it mentally. And, seeing stuff that's going to go wrong and just is not like a good sign. And you're like, this is going to come back and bite them later. In particular, also Punpun saying, yes, sure, I promise. And when has that ever worked? When does that ever work? So yeah, I think Trainwreck in slow motion would be how I'd describe quite a lot of the plot, to be honest with you. And
moving on to the plot, what did you think of what we've seen so far up to chapter 34?
I don't usually read so sort of like upsetting, not knowingly anyway, like dark mangas. I mean, like life is dark enough. It's like I don't need to like expose myself even more. Like I came here to escape. I typically read a lot of wholesome ones. But like this is like yeah, look, it's no secret. I love my slice of life, okay?
Who doesn't?
Yeah, I appreciate what it's trying to do. It's sort of like showing us like I guess I'm looking for it through a different lens where like you can kind of get like not everyone's childhood is like this perfect, oh, you just go to school, come back home, eat food and just, you know, rinse and repeat and have fun with your friends and that's it. Like, and actually typically no one has this sort of family because everyone has issues. It's just how extreme it is. Yeah, I feel like with this is showing like the extreme side where family problems could really sort of damage a kid's, I guess, like really heavily influence their like perspective on life, because you clearly see like, well, for me, like Punpun, it's like escapism, right? Like he knows, I guess, deep down that there wasn't a burglar, right? It was, you know, his dad. And on the other hand, yeah, he just chooses to sort of go with the flow and live on his life. Whereas the other kid, Seki, the one with the dad who's used to own a bento shop or whatever, they used to own a store and then that shop was bankrupted. And you can see sort of his views on like money, right? Because he has money problems and he sort of really like takes a stand on like, oh, you shouldn't be giving out your hard work money so freely, or like money shouldn't be, you should be earned rather than just like taken like for granted. And at this young age you already understand the implication of not having money and how hard it is to come by. So the plot, you just see like everyone's has some sort of problems in their life and how that's influenced them and affected them. And for me, like I'm enjoying it in the morbid sense where I just want to know how worse does it get. That's what like drives me. I'm not even reading it like pure morbid curiosity. Like I want to find out what happens next. Like where do they end up, right?
It's definitely that kind of weirdly fascinating. About every 2 years, I find something that's just really weirdly dark that I get really into. So like ReZero, it was a little while back. We had Life is Strange. And now it's apparently Oyasumi Punpun, where it's just, I don't know, there's something really gripping about it. I think it's because it's not constantly bleak. Sure, it's mostly bleak, but it's not just constant desperation and whatnot. There are some moments of happiness. And there is some humour too. I really like what they do in later chapters. This is unfortunately past chapter 34, but Oyasumi gets kind of longer hair at one point, and they actually use it to like point to stuff, like a quiff, pointing at things. And just little gags like that, I think can really help to lighten the mood a little. It means that it's a lot easier to carry on reading. So I had the issue with some of the later chapters in Berserk, and kind of with the prologue too, where it was constantly like bleak and just, you know, everything's bad. There's no humor. Nobody's having fun at all. It was harder to read, whereas this hit just a good balance for me. I got really invested actually just after chapter 34. The earlier chapters I didn't find super engaging just because I found it a bit weird, which I guess it is. And then the more invested I got in the characters, the more I wanted to learn about them. And so I finished chapter 34 yesterday and I was like, you know what, let's read a bit more. And then I just kind of kept reading. So here we are. So yeah, I enjoyed the plot generally. I say enjoyed. I found it interesting and I did like reading it, even though it wasn't exactly a fun experience, should we say.
Yeah, no.
I thought that the plot really encapsulated how complex life is and that everyone's trying to navigate this messy path of existing. Mm-hmm. So Punpun's dad bought Punpun a telescope and he often looks into it and sees the night sky. I know I'm reading really deep into it, but I took this as Punpun looking to the stars, as him realizing that there's all sorts of stuff out there. And at one point in the manga, there's snapshots of humanity where we're zooming out of life and our life bubbles of society, which I thought were really cool. And
yes, Jade, this is the content we're here for.
And yeah, not the bleakness at all. So it actually reminded me of my time in primary school when I wanted to be everything in the whole entire world. That's what the start of this manga reminded me of, but I didn't want my life to turn out the way Punpun's did later on. Definitely did not. I thought the pacing was well done.
Agree. Yeah,
like
definitely.
They didn't spend too long on a school year. You know, they skipped 2 years every now and then just to speed up the process of aging. That sounds really weird, but just to get us to Punpun's points in his life that are significant to him and his family members, which I thought were really well done.
What did you think of how they dealt with the other kids in his friendship group? Because they all kind of I actually don't remember how far they get with 34 chapters, but you can clearly see they're going to kind of do their own things, as in they all have kind of different ways that they develop.
It's quite realistic in a sense. I mean, especially like when you made friends at 11, and I guess like quickly being a teenager, it changes a lot of things. People grow quite fast during these years. The difference, like maturity and perspective, changes a lot between like 13 and 14-year-old. And you could say the same between the 14 and 15 and the 15 and 16 and so on and so forth. I'm sort of like I always say this, like your maturity kind of stagnates like as you're like growing older. I guess like not much, it's still like growing, but it changes. It stagnates a lot more. Not necessarily maturity, but just like how much you change in the way you're thinking.
Like, so you're saying like age 11 you versus age 12 you is very different to age like 22 you versus age 23 you?
Oh yeah, definitely, yeah.
Okay.
Like, I guess it's more realistic than like typical shonen ones where like, oh, everyone stayed the same. They change a little, but they're still friends. But in real life, it's like you lose the touch with some. You sort of realize, you know, you'll have different ideas on things. So we have the glasses kid who moved away. I think for the chapters we've read, like he hasn't come back yet.
Homi Shuntaro.
Yes. And then we have the kid who's good at badminton. What's it?
Yaguchi,
Yeah.
Takao Yaguchi, I believe.
He was part of the PwC. Is PwC? Was it P? Porn watching? Oh, PWS. Like no.
I have no idea what we're talking about.
Watching something like that's their like acronym.
Oh.
Yeah, it's interesting how like because of him picking up a sport and being good at it, he sort of like his whole identity is about like there are winners and losers in life, and sometimes you know you can't win, and happen to be one of the winners. I get that kind of vibe from him, and sort of kind of like grew a little bit apart from Punpun and the others, and I like the other two, the Poop God kid and Seki.
I think the Poop God kid is called Koshimizu. I'm reading this straight off the wiki. Not going to lie to you. I do not remember all the names.
Because I think the one I have is not helpful. It shows them as grown-ups, so I can't tell who's who. Koshimizu. Oh wow, they change a lot in the future.
Whoa. What are these spoilers?
I'm not going to say anything. It's spoiling for me.
You're telling me they grow up?
Whoa, people change. They change hairstyles. I don't know why. I found their friendship quite cute. You know, they sort of promise to look after each other despite everything. And I love how, like, the Poop God Shimizu, he's like, he could see Poop God. And then, yeah, I don't know what's up with that. And then Seki was like, oh, come on, like, don't tell me you still see that Poop God. He's like, no.
I do kind of wonder what the message behind the gods is. Because they all seem to have a god.
Yeah.
But they all seem to be so the Poop God seems, at least from what I remember, to be like pretty neutral, right? Whereas the Afro God, as he's called on the wiki here, doesn't really seem to be giving Punpun very good ideas. Like, these are not good ideas that he's getting. And I kind of wonder, like, is there a supernatural element? Is it just people's psyche? Is it something else? Who knows? I hope it gets explained later.
I'm not sure about the Poop God, but I thought that for Punpun's God, it was sort of created by Yuichi, who got it from someone else that he met previously. And I think for Punpun, as his family life wasn't very good and he had no one really looking out for him, he turned to his God that Uncle Yuichi helped create to ask questions and get answers. Because I felt like he didn't really have anyone there.
He doesn't really get any answers, though, does he? He more just
he
asks, and
doesn't.
then God goes, why would I know?
Yeah. But maybe that's a sort of signpost to the discovery aspect of life. Like, no one really knows.
Maybe it's like their God, it's like what they're missing a little bit. Like you said, like, Punpun didn't really have someone, like a proper grown-up, like a mentor, like to ask questions and has someone to guide him. So his version of God is like someone who would know the answer, because it is his like psyches. It's like if he doesn't know, then his God wouldn't, right? But I also feel like because he's always sort of putting the bad things in his life, he has a lot of like anxiety and such. Like it manifests itself as the God. That's my theory anyway. Like the God is kind of like always speaking about bad things, like it reminds me of that like little voice in your head sometimes when you like did something or you remember something really bad and they just go like, oh, don't you remember you did this? Like, what, wasn't that embarrassing? Like, oh, like maybe they don't like you, they hate you. Like,
I always like to think of it as the fact that you're embarrassed by it now means that you've grown as a person.
that's like some like wholesome meme Twitter account stuff.
Probably is.
Every week I see like a picture of like a corgi or something with the caption like, oh, like if you remember something embarrassing, it means you've grown.
It's a good way to think back on it though, rather than just like
Yeah.
cringing about that time that you, I don't know, I can't even think of anything remotely embarrassing enough to warrant, but rather than think about it and being like, you know, you can just kind of be like, I'm better than this, I have grown.
So Poop God, I feel like for what's his name, Shimizu, for him it's like maybe we saw a little bit glimpse of his family. Maybe he's like just wants someone to be there and just like wave at him and say you're good. Someone who's there just doesn't have to say anything and just supports him kind of like with no reason at all.
What advice would each of you give to 11-year-old Punpun?
Oh Christ, what a question to just drop on me like that. Damn, Jade. Oh my God. Okay. Jesus Christ. It's tough, isn't it?
Because like I feel like it's tough because it's like it's just bad things happening to him. Like I don't think he has much control over the things that are around him, right? And being so young, I feel like you shouldn't have the responsibility of picking yourself up. Like it just shouldn't. You should have like loving, caring people who be there for you and be that guiding voice rather than you attempting to try to figure everything out. So I don't know. What my advice would be is that find someone else who is not your family member as a mentor. But then again, knowing this manga, it's like no one is trustworthy. Not even a teacher. It's like, I mean, come on. What is that?
Crap.
Yeah.
Psych, like with the tongue, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, weird.
Yeah.
Okay, I've thought of it, and it would be. I mean, first I want to just give him a hug. I think he needs one. But it would probably be: you can take control of your life. It will be hard, but you can do it, and that will be how you find happiness. I think would be probably what I'd say to him, because I feel like early on, so especially when he's just 11, most of the stuff he has no control over whatsoever. He can't do anything about his parents' marriage, his friend leaving to go elsewhere. Like again, nothing he can do about it. And I don't think that as an 11-year-old, if your friend moves away, you should be expected to keep in contact. Like if you want to, great. But like if they're gone from your life at that point, like it's fine. It's not your responsibility to keep in contact. But as you get older, I think the level of responsibility you can take goes up. The level of responsibility you need to take also goes up, but you can do more. You can have more control. And it's learning to take that control is how you're going to then seek happiness and make happiness. And I feel like he's just never going to do that. So that was partly from what I was warned coming into it, was like he just never really, or at least until about, I don't know, maybe halfway, maybe further. I didn't really get it spoiled. Just doesn't really have that control. And I think that lack of control is why it's so difficult for him. Weirdly, that for me was a big parallel to one of the previous manga we did, Princess Jellyfish, where you have this main character that just doesn't really have control of their life for some reason. And I said in Princess Jellyfish, I found that terrifying. It's like one of the scariest things is to not have that, like any level of control. But at least in Princess Jellyfish, it's a wholesome story where she like, you know, she's going to progress and learn and have this like disruptive factor come into their life. And it's really a comedy. Whereas this is, it is not a comedy.
I think like with it's a cool parallel that you draw there, because I feel like with Princess Jellyfish, you have to remember it's like she's lucky that she accidentally found this like fashion obsessed person who's willing to be the go-getter for her, to push her. Whereas like Punpun, it's like he doesn't have anyone. Well, maybe Aiko, but that's like a different way. But she also a kid. And I feel like with him, I guess like this is just general advice in life, even when things are not in your control, like learn to accept them, because, you know, if you can't change a thing, then learn to live with them. And when you do have control in the future and, you know, resolve it the way you want it. I guess like I just have one more advice. there's plenty of fish in the sea, man. Like, it's not, Aiko or die. Like,
Mate,
please.
that first love though. That first love is a
That
strong
is
one.
true. No, okay.
Jay's
You
like,
know
nah,
what?
mate. I don't
Depends
know.
how romantic it is.
I mean,
Or
my first crush lasted like years.
What does love feel like
Warm,
as a
fuzzy, and
kid?
desperate.
That was really great advice. So last time we reviewed Bleach, and the main character of Bleach was Kurosaki Ichigo. This time we're going to put Kurosaki Ichigo into the world of Oyasumi Punpun. What do you think will happen to Ichigo, and how will he fare in Punpun's world?
Say like it's like a mashup of like Bleach and Oyasumi Punpun, and obviously heavier on the Oyasumi Punpun side. I feel like the feel good elements of like the wholesomeness of like people dealing with like unfinished business like ghosts and stuff will be even darker, instead of just this wholesome like, oh, you don't talk to me enough, sister, like I'm your big brother, like I miss you. Like it's more like messed up. I don't know how to, I mean, like if you just take any of one of the plot points in Oyasumi Punpun and just turn one of them into the ghost, like that's that's like a darker version of Bleach. I feel like it will work pretty great, because you have this element of people who moved on, who have like unsaid things, secrets that they haven't reviewed when they were alive. Yeah, he'll be more depressed, I feel like, Ichigo.
Yeah, I probably would have gone with more like Ichigo does really well meshing with his friends. Sure, he's kind of rude and abrasive, but he's also a lot of fun to be around. And I could totally see him just being like a relatively popular side character that's just kind of a bit rude to Punpun. Who would, I mean, they'd probably use it just to make Punpun feel lonelier or something. But I could see Ichigo doing quite well.
Yeah, I feel like Ichigo would just have really, really long conversations with Punpun about anything and everything. I feel like Ichigo is the kind of person that he maybe hasn't figured everything out yet, but he has a lot of things to tell, and maybe some of them could be beneficial to Punpun and really help him out.
There's actually a couple of good scenes kind of like that in Bleach with Chad. So Ichigo and Chad, they're kind of past. The chapters that touch on that are really good. In a similar kind of vein.
Chad is chef's kiss. I forgot about Chad, and you reminded me of Chad. Lightened my mood a lot more.
Do like Chad?
Yeah.
Yeah, he's got a really interesting backstory, but he is not in Oyasumi Punpun, sadly.
What are your final thoughts on Oyasumi Punpun, and would you recommend it?
Yeah, I probably would recommend it as long as you know what you're getting into. Understand that it's quite a kind of beautiful, if really bleak story. It's really well paced. The art is great. It's quite weird. I would recommend it, definitely, if you're in a kind of happy enough place normally that you can read it. I've been quite enjoying it. I'm probably going to read some more after this episode, to be honest with you. Just understand that it is really bleak, and you kind of have to be okay with that. You know, a lot of the characters, even the characters that are meant to be not like a father figure, but like the ones that are meant to kind of have their shit together, don't, like, at all, even remotely. And that kind of trickles down through all the other characters.
I would recommend this because it's definitely has a lot to say, and you get to see a lot of different perspectives. Like I feel like it's a really character-driven story, but knowing sort of how the timeline of this manga works, I feel like you will see a lot of development in the character. So that would be really interesting to see. Same with Oliver, like it's very bleak, but it's also like if you have like a morbid curiosity like me, like you'll find this very entertaining in the worst way possible. Like you just want to keep reading. You're like, I can't stop looking at this. Yeah, you know what? Kind of like it goes, we'll go around full circle back to the slow train wreck. It's like an accident. You know, like bad things are gonna happen, but you just can't stop looking away.
Man,
right?
we have got to read Miroko-chan soon.
No.
Put that on the list.
I would recommend, probably will read more, but I need to pace myself because it's just too much in one go.
Yeah, I completely agree with you, Oliver and Suellen. Really great thoughts on this. Yes, I would recommend it to everybody because I feel like everyone can see maybe a tiny bit of themselves and really feel for Punpun as he tries to navigate his life as a kid and as he gets older. And I feel like as a kid, sometimes you have big but fleeting dreams like winning the Nobel Prize. And I really related because as a kid, I had no idea what or who I wanted to be, so I wanted to be everything. So that was really nice to see my childhood reflected in this manga. And I feel like to kids, concepts such as love and relationships can be terrifying. As an adult, they can be as well. But I feel like this manga serves as a good reminder of everyone's going through some shit at some stage in their lives.
I was going to say, you said you'd recommend it to everybody.
Yeah.
Is that of all ages?
I probably wouldn't recommend it to little kids.
I mean, I certainly wouldn't. I would want to recommend it to somebody that would be mature enough to understand why what's going wrong is going wrong in Oyasumi Punpun, because then it doesn't become, it may still be dark, but it's not that kind of thing that haunts you and you don't understand why it's so wrong.
I think as a kid, when I read it, I thought, oh my God, like this is insane. This is really intense. And I think it just helped me become aware of these things. And I really felt for Punpun when I was younger and as I do now. I think this is probably my favorite manga.
Oh, high praise.
Like it stuck with me for so long, and I think I really see myself reflected in it. Not all parts, just some parts, such as the desperation aspect of it. And I feel like anyone who wants to maybe explore their darker side, or maybe they want to visit someone else's really bleak life.
What I think works quite well is it's unlike a lot of other stories that you get told, in that it explores quite a dark place and it explores it in a really well written manner. It's really well paced. The drawings obviously are great, and there's a lot of kind of imagery that's used, and it's used really well. So if you're looking for something different, and you don't mind that different being frankly really, really depressing, then yeah, it would be a pretty strong recommend.
Yeah, and it looks like we're going to be on a depressing streak for the next 2 episodes.
You know what? I'm defending
the
next manga that we're reading.
What is our next manga, Suellen?
It is The Promised Neverland by Kayu Shirai for the story and Pusuka Demizu for the art. We will be reading up to chapter 37. It's dark, but it's a thriller, so I don't think it has the same sort of bleakness. Just to kind of prime you for what you're going to be reading. But yeah, I hope you've enjoyed this episode.
Fantastic. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening, and oyasumi, everyone.
Oyasumi.